Have you ever felt that you give so much, that you have nothing left for yourself, that you are everywhere, for everyone, except for yourself? Maybe you didn't even realize when it started, but what you do know is that you are exhausted, empty, invisible. And in some very deep corner of you, something begins to whisper, "What if I stop being available?" What happens next is not what you expect. There is a moment in life, one that does not always arrive spectacularly nor announce itself with fireworks, when suddenly you realize that something has changed. You are no longer responding as quickly. You are no longer as attentive. You are no longer as available as you used to be. At first, that change is almost imperceptible, like a breeze moving the leaves but not yet stirring up dust. But over time, it becomes evident. There is a part of you that has begun to withdraw. Not out of selfishness, not out of coldness, not out of revenge, but because something inside you has grown tired of holding everything together. That moment is not a fall. It is a sacred surrender, not towards others, but towards yourself. It is the instant when you stop being available, and, as an inevitable consequence, everything begins to change. Because the truth, although hard for us to accept, is that many times we have confused love with sacrifice, presence with validation, giving with fear of not being enough. Since we were little, we were taught to be attentive, to be helpful, to say yes, even when something inside screamed no. We were rewarded for being available, for adapting, for pleasing, for being the child, the partner, the friend, or the professional who always has an answer, a solution, or a smile. And so, without realizing it, we began to build an identity that was not based on who we are, but on how much we can endure, offer, or save. But there comes a moment, if one is fortunate, when the body, the soul, or the heart can no longer tolerate it. That moment, although uncomfortable, is a disguised blessing. When I talk about stopping being available, I am not referring to disappearing off the map or cutting all your ties as if isolation were suddenly synonymous with healing. I mean something much deeper and more transformative. Stopping being available for what hurts you, exhausts you, diminishes you, traps you in patterns that repeat like an unconscious echo. It is a symbolic act of breaking with all those versions of yourself that learn to sacrifice in order to deserve a little affection or belonging. It is saying enough not to others, but to the part of you that believes you are only worth something if you give more than you have. Carl Jung spoke of the process of individuation as that journey in which one begins to reunite with the most authentic and forgotten parts of oneself. In that process, you cannot continue to be everything for everyone. You cannot remain available for every external emergency, every emotional drama, every space that demands your presence without offering reciprocity. Individuation requires silence, inner time, symbolic distance from external noise. And that inevitably means that something inside you must begin to say, no more. And when you start doing that, when, for example, you leave a message unanswered because your energy is not available, when you cancel a commitment because your body needs rest, when you choose silence instead of explanation, when you do not justify your absence because you no longer owe anything, something powerful begins to move, not only outside, also inside. The emotional system you sustained begins to crack. People accustomed to your permanent access become uncomfortable. Some distance themselves. Others complain. Others accuse you of having become cold, selfish, indifferent. But what has really happened is that you have stopped being functional to their needs, and not everyone knows how to tolerate that. The real challenge is not setting boundaries. It is maintaining them when guilt appears, because guilt is one of the fiercest guardians of the old self. When you start taking care of yourself, choosing yourself, prioritizing yourself, an internal voice, fed by years of conditioning, tells you that you are being cruel, insensitive, ungrateful. That voice is not your enemy, but it is not your guide either. It is just a part of you that has not yet been looked at with compassion. Jung would call it the shadow, a repressed psychic content that acts from the unconscious and only loses strength when it is brought to consciousness. That is why, when you feel guilt for not being available, do not run from it. Feel it, Listen to it. Ask it what it fears. Ask it what story it holds. And then, with love and firmness, remind it that your worth is not measured by how much you wear yourself out for others, but by how faithful you are to yourself. And in that fidelity to yourself, an internal alchemy begins to reveal itself that is not always noticeable from the outside, but that transforms everything. Because when you stop being available for what takes you away from your center, you automatically become available for what brings you back. The time you previously offered excessively to empty conversations or toxic relationships, you now dedicate to listening to yourself, writing what you feel, reading what nourishes you, exploring what truly interests you. Your silence is no longer absence. It is presence with yourself. Your withdrawal is not rejection. It is encounter. Your non-response is not indifference. It is respect for your energy. Then you begin to notice that the world responds differently. It's not magic, it's vibrational coherence. You no longer attract what fits your wound, but what fits your healing. People arrive with different frequencies, more integral, more authentic, more interested in who you are than in what you can give them. And instead of having to explain yourself or prove your worth, you simply are. And that is enough. Because you have understood deeply that your presence is not for sale, that you don't need to be everywhere to be loved, that those who truly love you don't need you to be available 24 hours a day to feel your affection, because that love does not demand. It accompanies. It does not claim. It honors. But to get there, you need to cross a desert. The desert of misunderstanding, inherited guilt, broken bonds, and emerging voids. You need to have the courage to endure your solitude without anesthesia, because many times being available has been a way to escape from yourself, to avoid facing silence, the lack of stimuli, the discomfort of being alone with your thoughts. But that silence, that discomfort, that apparent emptiness are the portal. They are the door to a more honest, lighter, fuller life. And if you wonder how to start, how to take that first step, you don't need to do it all at once. You can begin today with a simple gesture. Turn off your phone for an afternoon. See what arises. Anxiety? Guilt? Freedom? Then, honestly identify which people or situations disproportionately drain your energy. Ask yourself, does this nourish me or drain me? Am I here by choice or out of habit? What would happen if today I stopped being available for this? Write down the answers. Don't judge them, just observe them. And if you feel called, take one more step. Say no when you would have previously said yes out of obligation. Choose to stay home instead of forcing a conversation. Breathe. Notice how you feel. And then, little by little, without you having to impose it, the world begins to reorganize itself. Not because you have hardened, but because you have finally started to choose yourself. And when you choose yourself, when you make yourself available to yourself, life as a whole begins to return healthier versions of yourself. Your health improves, your mind clears, your emotions calm down, and that inner peace, far from isolating you, allows you to relate with more presence, more truth, and more love. Because now, when you are with someone, you are there out of desire and not obligation, out of conviction, not fear, out of fullness, not emptiness. So yes, when you stop being available, everything changes. Your way of living changes. Your way of loving changes. Your way of seeing yourself changes. Because you no longer need to be useful to feel valuable. You no longer need to save anyone to justify your existence. You no longer need to be exhausted to feel worthy of rest. You have understood that your life is yours, and that being available to yourself is the most revolutionary, loving, and transformative act you can do. Thank you for being here at Jung and You. Psychology for Change, for giving yourself this space and allowing yourself to understand, grow, and be. If this content has resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell, and share it if you think it can help someone who needs it, because here we continue exploring together what transforms us. See you in the next video. Until then, take good care of yourself.